Okie dokie. Oh, are we live, ladies and gentlemen? I think we are. Okay. Let me just fix up a couple things here, just so I can at least see what's going on in this darn stream. All right. So today is just ELFS, as you may have gathered from the thumbnail. It'll probably do some other stuff too. So I'm probably going to come back to the stone golem design, or maybe I've got the mummy lord pulled up here. I think I want to tool around with the mummy lord, do a little more rendering kind of stuff on stream, and see how that goes. But I kind of wanted to start off just warming up, doing some line work on these elf sketches that I had already done from a previous sketching session. So just kind of play around with these elfin fellows, taking a little deviation from the theme of the month that I've been going with so far. Choosing a random monster to do up. Instead, we're going to do real monsters, the aristocracy, the elites, the disgusting, I'm trying to think of what the opposite would be. It's like the unwashed masses, the pampered minority. The washed minority. I don't know. That it doesn't have the same ring to it, does it, as unwashed masses? But you know what? That's fine. That's a-okay. Probably gonna fuck up these hands. This is what happens when you draw, when you don't put enough detail into your sketch, and then you start drawing fingers individually. It's bad news bears. We'll return to that a little bit later. So I'd already started inking these a little bit, so there's already some stuff down here, and so I'm just kind of coming back in, refamiliarizing myself with what I was going for here. Obviously, this guy kind of like a prince or noble, perhaps a king or a duke. He's got a scepter, so that typically. I don't know if like dukes and duchesses and lesser lords under kings and such tend to carry around scepters. I imagine some of them do. And of course, we're talking like a fictional universe here, so of course they could if they so chose. Regardless, I just don't know what accoutrements they might have. But yeah, I like the idea of giving this guy a scepter. His crown's not quite ostentatious enough to be a king, right? So anyway, I hope everybody's doing well out there. All the less than a handful of people that are going to see this. I hope that you're drawing, you're creating, you're making cool stuff, or alternatively, just straight vibing. Vibing's good too. Hanging, chilling. I've got the Diablo lo-fi mix bumping in the background here. Yeah, I think I talked a little bit about Diablo 4 the other day. I'm not really keeping up with the news about it super closely, and I don't know when or if I will get around to playing it. I will actually be at a convention during the open beta for it, unfortunately. And I have plans during the early open beta, so I'm not going to pre-order this game. I'm past the point in my life where pre-ordering games is a thing that I do. It's not to say I think that's a thing that young people do more. It's just a thing that I've grown out of, because I like to get games, several years after they come out, generally on a discount, with the exception of Elden Ring, which I bought not right when it came out, but pretty close. I definitely paid full price for that sucker. And I'd say I got my money's worth out of it, that's for sure. Put a lot of hours into that game. Did not beat it, but was satisfied with what I got out of it. And eventually I'll probably return to it and beat that sucker. I mean, why not? These shoes are nuts. I don't know what I was thinking with these. Like, what is going on here? His feet. His feet. If these were actually his feet, they would be super fucked up because, like, yeah, you can see this doesn't make sense. Like, his heel kind of going in here. His heel needs to be moved back significantly, because his feet would be super fucked if that was... I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on YouTube. I don't know if the YouTube gods are going to be after me. I know there's something like... I mean, not that these videos are monetized, but something about like advertisers getting all pissy and like YouTube implementing that policy where if there's like swear words in the first like minute or something of a stream or video, then it gets demonetized, which I think is pretty funny. And of course, the general consensus on that is, well, there's all this other disgusting stuff on the platform that doesn't get any attention or regulation by the platform. I don't know, maybe because it would be politically divisive to do so in some instances. But whatever. Right now, it's not going to affect me at all. Because we're doing this for the love of the game. The love of the game, friends. That's what it's all about. What game? That is a great question. What game indeed? The game of chicken scratching away at an ink drawing without any goal in mind. Now, this guy definitely looks like he's got like a fierce British nobleman's accent, and he is either a huge tool who is completely reprehensible and totally evil, or he is a huge tool who's sort of a pragmatist with generally good intentions, and people like begrudgingly respect him because his ideas are good, and he's like the head honcho or whatever. People begrudgingly respect his wisdom because he gets results. That's the vibe I'm getting from this guy. This guy, on the other hand, is some kind of nefarious, dastardly fellow. I think that's pretty clear. He's like kind of sneer. You can imagine him kind of giving a sneering remark, being an a-hole in this image right here, being a total d-bag, as it were. He's got a little bit. I haven't really started on his. Maybe I'll try to make this a little more designed. I don't know, because these were just kind of like random sketches. But anyway, I was definitely going for this guy is a huge tool bag, and this first guy is some kind of priest. I think he was the first one that I sketched out, and then I sketched this guy. And I gave him kind of this round cape. I don't know how I feel about that exactly, but sometimes it's nice to kind of mix around these elements of like sharp and soft, sharp and blunt, just to get across that a character is not unidimensional, or perhaps they want to give off a vibe that they are in fact just a chill dude when really they are pretty mother effing evil or something. I don't know. I like the idea of characters who are not necessarily ambiguous, but like, they've got reasons for their actions. That being said, I also love a good just villain that's like totally just bonkers and just evil for no reason, or because the reason is just that they have no reason to follow the rules. I don't know if that makes sense, but you can imagine like in a D&D type setting, or a fantasy setting, there are just creatures and monsters who live totally outside the realm of the cares of the mortal world, right? It's like they're like what they think is morally correct has no no bearing on, or no relationship to the things that average mortals would find to be more morally correct. So they can kind of just do as they please. And that, obviously pisses people off, and can turn them into real monsters. I don't know. That's why I think, there are certain things about science fiction and fantasy that kind of like fall apart when you set up a world where that is possible. And like one thing, for example, this always bothered me about Doctor Who, as I started watching Doctor Who when I think I actually started on the first season that David Tennant was in on. So I don't remember the name of the first guy in the reboot. He was only in it for one season, and he was like the D-bag, like scarred war veteran doctor, basically. So what was I saying with that? So Doctor Who has this very much like, humanity is this like special and important little gem, and they're precious and must be protected at all costs, and the Doctor is like really invested in humanity, despite the fact that billions of other species like exist in this universe and have all these different abilities and ideas and cultures, and there's nothing special about humanity in that context, right? But the show, of course, treats the audience like as if that's true, like treats the kind of premises of the show and its plots as if that is the case, which I think is fine until the show like keeps going for 20 seasons, right? which is like Doctor Who in a nutshell. And I think when you're trying to like force like a human view of morality and values onto, and not even an indifferent, but just like an incredibly diverse and neutral universe with all kinds of different stuff happening and creatures with different kind of needs and social values. I don't know. It just doesn't really add up. So that always kind of bothered me about Doctor Who after the first couple seasons. Because in some sense, it's like the message is like kind of uplifting, and in other ways, it's kind of just like super annoying. Like, I remember there's this one episode where they go to like the end of time, and there's this like colony of humans who are like the last humans in the universe, like one of the last species, and the Doctor actually makes a comment about like how they're like practically unchanged after presumably millions or billions of years, because of course all of the humans are played by, you know, all these human extras. They're not aliens. They didn't dress them up in any way. They didn't really think through. You know, it's like, what would be the case if, you know, humans went on existing for billions of years and they had space travel and all this new technology? Like, what would that actually look like? And yeah, the show isn't interested in those kinds of like sci-fi questions. Like Doctor Who is basically like Star Wars in that sense, where it's like a fantasy show based in space. Everything is magic. There is no science in Doctor Who, which, you know, kind of helps explain some of the kind of mystical thinking that they approach the value of the human race with. That being said, it's also just like one of those things where I don't know if it's just like a meta thing where they're trying to like comment on like, oh yeah, like we need to say something about the fact that all the humans in this episode, despite being like millions and millions of years after, you know, humans on Earth, you know, came into being, billions of years, they look exactly the same, and the Doctor needs to say something about that. And I don't know if it breaks the immersion more or less. I think more so, because he goes further than just commenting on it as like a means of kind of maintaining immersion, but they go so far as to say like that's because like humans are unique or special in some way, that humans are special enough that they would in fact have stayed the same all these years, that they would have not physically, you know, changed at all, because they're essentially kind of good as they are. Which, you know, there is like, I could see potentially a kind of sci-fi based argument for that, which is that, you know, humans, like our use of tools, you know, has kind of like restricted the biological need for us to like evolve physically. And so because there's no selection pressure for, you know, or there's not as much selection pressure for physical traits, you know, we would essentially like stop changing as quickly or as we might have otherwise if we were like, you know, a different species that relied more on physical attributes for survival as opposed to kind of mental or psychic attributes. I could see that, you know, kind of being a thing. But it's also like nuts to think that like, you know, humans who are, you know, part of a spacefaring society capable of surviving, you know, for billions of years and traveling the cosmos all around wouldn't have even like of their own volition like changed their essential forms in some way. And so obviously, I think that the limitations of the television format and budgets and everything has always been sort of like a staple of Doctor Who, and it's like understandable that they wouldn't go that way, but just the fact that they comment on it in that fashion sort of serves to give up the game a little bit. It serves to demonstrate that, these writers at least want to play on the audience's human biases. And of course they would. They're making a fantasy show for children. I'm just kind of being mean. I don't know. I haven't watched Doctor Who in years. It's frankly, it was one of those things that, like, in high school I watched it, and then I was really into it, and I rented all the DVDs for the seasons that they had at the library. I don't even know where you could watch it back then. Like, I think you had to have like BBC America or whatever, or just BBC to watch it. It's back when it was like airing, of course. But at any rate, I think I crapped out around the Matt Smith point. I didn't get the next guy or what's her face. I didn't watch any of that. I was pretty much like, yeah, this feels kind of tired. It's tough. You can imagine the challenge that the writers of Doctor Who would have, trying to maintain this character across all these timelines, and then having to deal with like things that were set up by previous writers, which may or may not even make sense to pay off because the timeline's all fucked. I can imagine that show is like a nightmare to write, and so falling back on these kind of episodic, sort of like feel-good stories, would be a common thing to do. But personally, I always thought the episodic, like, creepy stuff was the best. Like, there's an episode where they go to this planet that's like suspended above a black hole or something, or a sun that's about to explode that's being like kept in stasis by some strange force. And I think it's maybe the first appearance of the Ood, where it's like it's like the devil is basically being like held imprisoned in this cosmic sort of like trap, and it tries to escape by like inhabiting the Ood, and then inhabiting like like as a host, like one of the crew members, and it's pretty creepy and fun. It's a fun little episode, and that one is kind of like a nice blend of that kind of sci-fi and fantasy value system that the show kind of relies on. So it's like, okay, so the devil is this kind of mythic figure, and devil-like creatures like appear in different cultures, and this is like the origin of that. Like, and this thing has been imprisoned by some ancient alien species, and it's mysterious, and we'll never actually know like what's going on there. And I like that kind of stuff. I like the kind of maintaining of mystery around that, while still kind of like giving it this sort of not even scientific, but just like, okay, this thing is a real being, but it still maintains this air of like mystery, and we can't let it escape into the galaxy, or it'll screw everything up. Release its evil energies onto the world. Like, that's pretty cool. That was a cool episode. So stuff like that, I think they typically did a pretty good job with. Or the one where, like, I think it was the one written by Neil, or I think Neil Gaiman wrote a couple different episodes, but there was one where it's like the TARDIS, like he has to go into it, or it comes alive or something, and it's like kind of has a female persona, like it's his wife or something like that. I remember enjoying that episode. I'm sure there's a lot of episodes that if I went back and watched them, I'd enjoy them. And I think it's definitely a case of a show that got like too big for its britches, you know. I think Star Trek sort of went that way, according to Star Trek fans, with like Picard and stuff being a little bit. Star Trek is probably a different story, where they're trying to make that show appeal to a wider audience when, you know, it was pretty intellectual, and then when they got a big budget, they sort of like went balls to the walls on all the kind of big action sequences and stuff. Which I don't, you know, like having only seen a few episodes of Star Trek and mostly The Next Generation, definitely not the appeal of that show. It's the kind of kooky little little adventures that they have. And that one, you know, it's like it kind of makes more sense in the context of that show to think about, okay, what are the human values at play here, because it is a crew of humans, you know, with a few aliens sort of mixed in, but it's not like the Doctor, where the Doctor is like a different species, presumably that existed, you know, outside of time, or like, you know, long before the human race, and interacted with many more species before humans ever came onto the scene. And so it kind of makes you question, like, why is humanity so precious to this guy? And the reason is because the show is written by humans for humans. That's why. And if you can get past that, it can be very entertaining. Or, you know, as long as the show kind of maintains this sort of like, well, I know I'm watching television kind of mindset or intentionality, then I can stick with it. But it's a little too hoity-toity for me. Kind of like these elves here. I haven't talked about these elves. I've just been kind of inking away, just sort of mindlessly, which I enjoy doing, and that's all fine and dandy. And there's some like little kind of details that I've added here that you know, I don't intend to necessarily ink in. I think I would rather kind of take those on in the coloring stage, but maybe not. I don't know. That's what we're working with so far. So we got a ways to go on some of these guys, and I definitely want to think about like what's going on with these little pouches of theirs. One thing that I need to get more into is like researching some of these accessories, you know. Maybe making some of my own as like a prop as well. Just kind of playing around with some things there. He's got a big old pouch of goodies right there. Probably spell components, I'd wager, if I were a betting man, that this fellow is a caster of some renown. Kind of like the idea of one of those handles that kind of has the ridging on it, or the ribbing. Like tight ribbing with like a textured kind of grip. He's got his fancy belt. Maybe the belt has kind of like an eye It's like a jewel sort of thing going on in the... as the belt buckle. He has his dagger hanging there. This is sort of a vest thing, so make that apparent. This guy's got a few different layers to him, so he definitely has a little bit of an Ozymandias vibe to him. Sip of coffee there. Just some leftover kind of weakened coffee. So I start my day with an Americano, and then because I'm cheap and lazy, I just run the espresso maker again to get like a weaker cup out of the original grounds. There's probably a lot of coffee snobs out there that would, want to send me to some kind of tribunal or something for such an offense. But what can I say? I like, one of my favorite things in the world. Not really, but like, I think in the context in which it occurs is like when you're at some kind of event or conference or any place where there's just like free stations with coffee, and the coffee is like the worst coffee ever. It's either like, really crappy dark roast coffee that is brewed like way too strong, and it just tastes like burnt, disgusting, like dirt. There's that kind of coffee, or it's just like it's that same coffee, but it's brewed incredibly weak, and it's like just water. And in either case, it's the only time I'll add cream to my coffee, or half and half, or whatever they provide, is under those conditions where the coffee tastes so horrendous that you really have no other choice but to obscure the flavor by some means. I was thinking about giving this guy tights, but I kind of like the idea of these like baggy pants that are tied off by some kind of decorative cuff at the bottom. Yeah, definitely got some work to do on his hands. I think this guy's a little baggy thing here, though I gotta figure out. Yeah, there's something going on there. At least a little something. I was wanting today as well to kind of play around with some new kind of like line art methods. The inking just gives me a feeling of solidity to the drawing that allows me to really see what's going on a little better, but I would like to kind of go back to something that I used to do a little bit, which was use a little more of a kind of pencil-like brush to keep the kind of like sketchy feel of it, and then when you go in and ink over it, just convert that layer to a multiply layer, or do something else with it, or just get rid of it at some point. With the inking, you kind of end up having to keep the inks, or if you do away with them, you know, there's a lot more work you have to do to make the drawing make sense as a painting afterward. But I know that like Evan Amundsen, for example, will he works primarily in Procreate, and so there's some nice brushes in Procreate that kind of lend themselves to that approach, and I have tried that method before and I do like it, but it's definitely a little messier and requires a little bit more of a kind of an understanding of what makes for a good kind of like painterly sort of approach to a piece, which I'm not terribly well versed in. Just adding some fun little details down there. And like at some point I would go in here and really kind of buff up these lines a little bit more, thicken them up a little bit. And maybe, you know, it could be fun too to kind of like go in and really like go to town on these as if they were just going to be a black and white ink drawing, and kind of render them that way, because I do enjoy that. I do enjoy that style, and having some more like pools of shadow and things like that to really emphasize that kind of weightiness and dark, bold shadows. The staff is kind of effed up. Probably be easier to just I was going to say use like a line tool, but you also want it to kind of taper down a little bit as it goes. Staff kind of has like an alien sort of look to it, which I don't know that I love. This looked almost like a nose or something, like the nose of a moon. And it could be fun, kind of fun to play off of that. Like this is a little like, this guy's like sucking on a little jewel thing. Ooh, I kind of like that. Where it's this staff that's like actually this like wicked kind of like moon face thing on it. Maybe the staff is like some kind of sentient minion of his. It's like this, like a malevolent moon spirit or something that he's pressed into his service and turned into like this magical artifact. That's kind of fun. Sometimes I feel like I just don't get these types of ideas sometimes when I'm just drawing by my lonesome, so it can be fun to take this stuff into a stream, even if nobody else is there, and just kind of toil away at it and see what kind of ideas you come up with. Maybe we don't make it so that he's like got like a ball gag basically in his mouth. Like maybe we don't go that way, but maybe we do. I don't know. It's kind of fun. I kind of like the idea. Like if this is like a some kind of being that's been pressed into service against his will, you know, maybe we do muzzle him, so to speak. The idea of this being like a pearl or a gemstone or something like that. Yeah, I actually don't mind that. We want his eye to be like kind of angry, wide open eye. Yeah, I like the idea of it kind of like staring out like dead into space. That's pretty fun. I like that staff. Yeah, that's fun. That's fun. That's goofy. That's D&D. That's like an interesting. Again, it's like a node of interest, this is like, especially conspicuous stuff like that. I think the more cartoony or fantastical the setting, the better. And then, of course, in any context where there is like some kind of interaction between the audience and the character. That kind of stuff works even better. Or that kind of stuff makes even more sense. It's like, oh, it's a wizard, he has a staff. Nobody's going to think to ask necessarily what the staff looks like. So if you need them to know that information, if you want your players to know that information, or there's some way that you can get them to ask about it, sometimes just having an image can be fun. And one thing that's tough in Dungeons & Dragons is, so for example, if you describe something, it's not drawn out as an image, or you describe things but you don't have like a lot of the details surrounding it worked out. The second you start describing things, like the prescient things, the things that are necessary for a puzzle, or indicators of a character's intentions, will jump out at your players in a way that you might not want them to. You might want there to be a little more of an exploratory process, and so having a little more richly developed NPC or environment or monster or whatever can give you a little bit of room to play with their expectations, right? So in this example, if you show them a picture, some of them might be like, oh, that staff's kind of cool. And then during a fight, maybe later, maybe he used it to cast some kind of spell, and maybe the spell is issued in a certain way, or you can hear like the staff like groaning or something. There's like a weird noise. Or maybe you find the staff like while the wizard's sleeping, and it can give the character some kind of clue. Those kind of things can be fun, and it's easier to get, or it makes more sense like narratively if that's pre-established, right? I do a lot of like fly by the seat of my pants DMing, and depending on your party, that can be fun. But a lot of times, rather than having like a story or like a specific sort of narrative. Or kind of like order of operations for a quest laid out, I will instead think about like who are the characters involved, what are some of like the major set pieces and things like that, and the way the characters react to what your PCs are doing, the way the NPCs would react, having those kind of responses sort of figured out ahead of time, rather than trying to railroad your players, can be really helpful. And I find it's just more fun and more interactive to sort of do things that way. And I also find that drawing characters kind of like helps give me an understanding of what their personality would be. Like these two have very, I think, obvious sort of personalities based on their expression and their clothing and their, or they at least have obvious kind of like archetypes. And then there's room to play within those archetypes on like what, how they would actually behave, of course. Because like I said, like this guy, what I like about him is that he sort of could be one of those sort of like stern assholes. He could be, you know, actually legitimately evil, or he could be just kind of like a serious guy. And sometimes you don't know that until you've you know, explored that character a little bit more and tried to figure them out and had interactions with them. So I know I said I wasn't going to do all the details on this guy right now, but I want to get kind of some of the big separations laid out ahead of time. I like the idea of these two both having gloves of some kind. This last guy I haven't started on. Maybe we'll start working on him and see where things go. Maybe make him a little bit more rotund, a little bit wider. A little bit more of a kind of a disappearing chin. Get that upturned nose going on. This one, I think, it was my least favorite design, so I didn't like go any further with it before. And so I'm probably going to change this one a little more significantly from the initial sketch. And I can't remember if I don't know if I did like, no, all the layers are showing, so I must not have done an undersketch of this guy previous to this line art right here. One of the things is like elves, you know, they have eternal youth, but it's tough to capture that like curmudgeonly sort of vibe. I think I wanted to go for with a couple of these guys. If they don't look old, if they don't have some indication that they are old. So these elves would be like really old if they looked like this, probably. Maybe not the second guy, but this guy and the third guy for sure. Maybe we'll have him like looking up as he prays. I don't know. This guy, he definitely has more of a cleric vibe, I think. Sort of a priest of some type. And probably a corrupt priest. I don't know. He's not like going to be super pudgy, but definitely give him a little bit more of a... I don't know what I was thinking with this collar here. It looks maybe a little too crazy. Look at this guy, some kind of widow's peak thing. He's really concentrating on something. He's got luscious lips. It's not really my intention, but oh well. Yeah, this is... something's happening here. Definitely give this guy some nice big sleeves. Which is kind of fun. That's fun. Got some sleeves going on. And maybe he's about to do some anointing. I don't know. I don't know what his dealio is yet, you know. Yeah, I'm not feeling this guy enough. I don't think to continue with him. I think he needs a little bit something extra. I like his staff, so maybe I'll do something with that at a later date. But I think these two fellas are bigger winners and deserve a little more of my attention. So. Go in here, make some of these lines a little bit bolder. The thing about elves is that their ears kind of give you a way to get some free kind of like visual interest in the head area, because they're pointy and they jut out potentially, and you know, you can do stuff with that, which is kind of fun. Losing some lines here. It's maybe a little too thick, but that's okay. Ugh, that knee indication that even the potential of it being a knee there is definitely wrong. That's something up with this guy's legs if his knee is all the way down there. Yeah, something fishy about this fella here. This guy, I just really like this guy's face. He's got a fun face. So, we'll have to do something with this character. Probably give him like a sword or something at his belt. Seems like this is the kind of guy who would have at least like an ornamental sword of some kind. And I might want to sketch that out before I go in with the old G pen here, the real G pen. Real G's only. Use the real G pen. And I probably should have sketched out his hand in a little more detail too. Looking at how it's turning out now. Ugh. Oh, this guy doesn't have the big ruffly sleeves like his friend over here. Just adding some little things there. Yes. Yes, quite. That's supposed to be monsters and mercenaries, but really just NPCs in general, I think, is what I want to try and generate more this month. This guy's got some tights on for sure. I mean, look at those calves. So this guy, yeah, he strikes me as like somebody who... He's the guy that gives the orders, but he also isn't afraid to get his hands dirty. And in his youth, probably earned his accolades, unlike certain other members of the aristocracy. Perhaps he has some scorn for those We're kind of just born into their position and don't take their roles seriously. These are the kind of little ideas that I should probably be writing down, because then you can kind of bring that back into the sketch and enhance those ideas visually, just with a little bit more intention behind your sketch, right? I don't really want to noodle too much more with this right now. Little tiny additional details, just trying to flesh that out a little bit more. Yeah, these two are fun. These two have legs. Literally and figuratively, they have legs. I actually got to the legs on both of these guys. I actually drew them. It's not really a particular problem I have, but sometimes I will start a drawing, even though it's like digital, it's just annoying to have to resize it. Like I was doing this kind of like orc nomad kind of warrior fellow. And he's pretty squat, and that's because I started him up here and then had to like resize him, and I should have just made him smaller because he looks pretty darn short. So maybe he's more of like a hobgoblin at this point, because orcs are supposed to be pretty tall, and if he's tall and this thick, this is one tank of a half orc here, which is not wrong. It's not the wrong way to go about that. Okay, now for this one, there are things that need to be done. For sure. There's still things to be colored. And I think some of that I want to just do... Okay, so that's the layer with the white. That looks like some colors on the... Yeah, the layer management. Layer management, you can't see the layers because of where my camera is. In fact, I don't know if you could see... I'd have to move the thing around. I'm not going to do that. Anyway, the layers, my layer management, not super hot. So I end up doing shit like this where I'm just like going around like, what the hell is everything? That being said, okay, okay. Call this I'm going to rename this actually right now. Ah, there we go. Jewels, accessories. Okay, good job. All right, so that's our jewels and accessories layer, and right now I kind of just want to. I was gonna play around with an idea that I had because I like so. Duplicate subtool. Tool icon. Yeah, watercolor's fine. Okay. So watercolor 2. And then I'm wondering if I can... Ooh. This is amount of paint color stretch. What is this? Changes how much Existing colors get dragged with new brush strokes. Ah, okay. I'm going to try turning this all the way down. And then we're going to go in here and try and screw around with this a little bit. Now, this is not perfect by any means, but okay, that's not giving me exactly what I was looking for. Because what I was hoping for was this is like amount of paint, hardness. It is not. It's still blending. I was like, how do I get it to stop blending? This is like almost what I want. But it's not quite there. Because I do want to achieve a more painterly kind of workflow at some point. And the reason I like the watercolor is that it's just fun. Actually, I don't know why that's not done. Can I add that later? What is going on with that? No, that's... Ah. Switched to the, yeah, that would explain. Okay, I'm just a dummy. I was like, shouldn't I be able to draw on this? But I was a fool. You see. Make these little glowing nodes or something. This bottle thing could use some work. It probably needs to be totally redone. But you know, that's okay. All right, let's come in here with this. It's all too. Yeah, that is above that. Okay. This staff also needs to be extended back. Let's see, what else can we do with this guy? Now I want to go just like up top here and just kind of mess around with like painting over certain areas of this with like just the watercolors. Seeing what that gets us, if anything. Kind of adding like a yellowy sort of color over here. Yeah, I don't know. I probably need to use this a little more sparingly. Because the strength of the watercolor brushes in Clip is that I think that you do get a little bit of that more blendy kind of traditional feel, and so just painting over this stuff probably isn't going to give me exactly what I'm looking for. Instead, we're going to go in kind of like, ooh, what's going on with that? Am I? You know what? Yeah. Okay. Need to make a new layer for that. Okay. Actually, since we are doing this on skin, let's take this right below the... You know what? I may even have a skin layer already. Okay. We're figuring out the workflow as we go. This is why I haven't done this on stream. Because yeah, okay. Yeah, I think we want to be above that guy. What is this layer? That's the light color. Yep, okay. Okay. What's this? Teeth and nails? Okay. That's that. Okay. So we'll just be about that. Maybe I'll just bust this out and make this just a marathon of a stream. I had some big tasty buttermilk pancakes that my fiance made me this morning, and a smoothie, which I made for myself like a big boy when I woke up this morning. So I'm ready to go. I'm ready to frickin' rock this out, you know what I'm saying? What this is doing is blotting out some of these kind of textures that I added in here. Not even textures, but just the certain local color thingies that I did. And I think if I turn this into a multiply layer, it would screw things up too. So I'm not quite sure what to do about that. Okay, this is over my white, which was the intention. Earlier I was using the gouache brush for some of this. going pretty fast here. Just the same. I'm trying to stay at like a high level so I'm not noodling too close to the details here. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think I might need to get in a little and start really going after the details a little bit more. What would happen if I turn this into a multiply layer? Ugh. No. No, we don't like that. That's gross. Make that a normal layer again. Okay. Could lighten it a little bit. Now, I could go in again and just kind of taking out some of the texture that I added with that gouache brush earlier, but I don't mind that per se. And this is on the same layer as the little shadows that I just added in there. So gotta be careful with this. Ooh, I should probably click save. Save your stuff, kiddos. Do not lose it to the evils of the big crash. Don't let technology steal your work. Yeah, I don't think I've talked about AI at all on these streams, and I don't really plan to, but at least not anytime soon. Or at least not right now. A divisive topic. Personally, yeah, not a fan. Not a fan of the AI art. And just generally as a concept, I think it's fine. I think it's like as an exercise in like, could we make this work? It's like, okay, whatever, sure. Let's give it a shot. But generally speaking, yeah, the way it's been executed, and other people have talked about this, obviously in way more depth than I could even hope to go into. Yeah, it just doesn't, I'm not seeing like the value proposition for most people. Because it doesn't actually make you good at art. It doesn't make you like the big thing is like, oh, it'll mean that creativity is like open to everybody like now, which kind of reinforces the myth that being able to draw is like only an innate, talent that you have to have if you want to be successful at it, which is, of course, not true. You can train at it. And there's just a notion that, like, being able to have this thing generate the image for you means that you have access to creativity in a way that you didn't before. And I think that is, like, just a fundamentally silly way to look at it. Like, it's showing you a thing based on its database of all the things that it's collected and labeled under the queries that you put into it. This is sort of the case, regardless of how the system is structured. On the back end, like the user experience is basically going to be like that, right? You're summoning images, and it may take you a while to find the one that really appeals to you, but you're still just kind of like using your taste to make those decisions in a way that it's different than reacting to something that you're making actively, like something like this, where while I am drawing on all of the previous knowledge that I have about Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy and mummies and all these other things, and probably all of the artists that I've ever loved are kicking around in my brain while I do this. It's not the same as just having like a huge database of images that just summons itself at my whim to make this shit. So, that's why I didn't want to talk about this, because now I'm just rambling about it, and I don't really have a goal in mind or a point to it, so to speak. All right, this guy's got blue gems only. Bluish gems, whatever. These are probably going to be coins. Maybe I'll screw around with those a little bit later too. What do we got here? Trying to see how long have I been at this? Okay, an hour and 23 minutes. Yeah, we can keep going. Keep going. Now, this is I'm kind of just experimenting with the rendering on this, because I definitely don't have things like locked in as much as I would have liked. Well, let me see. How did I? Yeah. Oh, this is only at. Okay. I think I might redo that shadow multiply layer on this entirely and do it in such a way that it gives me more of kind of like nice hard edges and shadows. Meaning we're going to bring in the lasso tool, ladies and gentlemen. Ooh, look at those nice, crisp, freaking crispy shadows. So crispy, you could, it's like a potato chip. Potato chip crisp. Those are the kind of shadows that you might want if that's what you're going for. Right? That's something's a little too crisp almost. Oh boy. Yeah, I think that's because I sort of added shadows into this. underneath as well. So some of these shadows are kind of killing my vibe here. Definitely like a hard shadow coming from that. Everything under here would be under a hard cast shadow. Basically under the chin. Under his chinny chin chin, as they say. Look at this fellow's funny little chin. You know how it do. And one reason that you want to you sometimes want to really go after these hard edges on your shadows is, especially in digital, is it's just hard to maintain that if you're using like an airbrush or a lot of digital brushes for that matter. Something Steven Zapata talks about is really demanding your hard edges. And that can certainly be the case. That you're going to lose them as you continue to render something. So having them be nice and crispy up front and then kind of adding and then kind of softening where needed is sometimes easier than hardening the shadows later, if that makes sense. I wonder if we could just put this whole hand in shadow here. Maybe. I think over here, honestly, probably should be in shadow. I'm trying not to muss with these edges too much, but now, one thing about the lasso tool, of course, is that it is rather messy. And kind of screw up your... I just want this whole foot in shadow. And then we can kind of play with that later. Yeah. Is this foot sort of like back, a little set back a little bit? Back, you fiend! I'm kind of thinking about doing some Diablo fan art. So I just did the kind of like Deckard Cain voice, but there's like, it's like, okay, so I could draw Diablo. I could draw like the bosses maybe. I could draw Deckard Cain. You know, he's pretty recognizable. And then who else? Like, because it's like a game where you're making your own characters and stuff. Well, there's like, you know, there's classes, but I don't think they're really recognizable. You know, it's like if you're doing fan art, you want it to be like a thing that even if you change it up, like the character is recognizable. Oops. Did I just, I think, oh, yeah, that's what I did. Okay. You want the character to be recognizable, like, as that character. even if you're adding some kind of unique spin to it. And like, who's recognizable in Diablo? So Tyrael, that Archangel design, pretty widely recognizable. Deckard Cain, of course. Diablo. Maybe Bale. He's probably not as popular a choice for fan art per se as his brother. Yeah, I think Diablo is the younger brother. There's Mephisto. Nobody likes him. He's a total loser. I can't remember if he's like. I can't remember, like Diablo is terror. Mephisto is something dumb like hatred or something like that. Then Bale is destruction, right? I don't really remember. And then the new game is like focused on Lilith, I think. Is her name? Because of course it is. It's funny that because I think Mephisto and Bale have some kind of mythological significance, and Diablo is just like the devil, right? Which is not to say the devil doesn't have significance, but it's just like the devil in Spanish. like, don't get me wrong. I think it is pretty cool. It is cooler than just calling the game Devil, for sure. And maybe there's some other significance to that I'm missing, but. I watched like some kind of like game dev like breakdown thing of like the process of developing the first Diablo game, and one of the like lead designers, it was like the lead designer in the game, was talking about how they were like originally gonna have it be turn-based, and then they totally changed that based on, I don't know, the release of some other game, because they were really going after that kind of like Baldur's Gate sort of the success of that game. And they ended up like, it was like they had some meeting where they were like, oh, we should change this to just a real-time game and have the action all be in real time. And the lead developer guy was like, that'll take forever. Like, that's going to set us back months. And then, like, after they had the meeting, he was like, all right, well, I should really, I should at least give it a try. I should test it out and see if it works. And, like, he did something where, just like the way the game was designed, it actually was a lot easier than he thought to convert it to real time. And then he just, like, did that on a Friday and spent the weekend, like, playing the game in that format, and was like, this is 100%, like, the direction we have to go with this. And I think that's just, like, such a fun story that, obviously, it's the kind of thing that really would only happen with an indie developer today, because there's like very few, it's like a Blizzard, any game that they're publishing or developing, for example, you're not just going to have one guy like retool the engine on a Friday afternoon to make that happen. So I thought that was pretty neat. I thought that was kind of neat. Kind of a neat story that I thought I'd share with y'all. Yeah, I feel like I've talked about Diablo almost every single, almost every single one of these streams, which is funny. Because it's not even like a game. Like, I played a lot of Diablo 2 and 1. But I'm not, like, particularly obsessed with Diablo, and certainly, like, I played 3, but it was just, like, nowhere near the same level of hype. And I also, like, was older, I say older, I was like, about to graduate high school, I think, maybe, when Diablo 3 came out. Maybe a year out from that. Because I remember, like, I wasn't going to get it, and then this kid I worked with at Papa John's was like, bro, you got to get it. And I did. I caved. And I did enjoy myself for the time that I did play. I caved on it. I went and got the game. I still remember when I got the Diablo Battle Chest. I think at Target. Back when that was buying physical copies of games was a thing. Which I guess it still kind of is, but yeah, that was like one of the best purchases I've ever made. In terms of like sheer value. Because I don't remember how much it was. It was maybe like, so somewhere in like the $30 to $40 range, and you get like these like 2.5 amazing games basically. So you get the expansion for Diablo 2 as well with that. So you get 1, 2, and the expansion. I was like, sank many hours into those suckers. And that was like, there was this, you hear about when you're a kid, back in this period of time especially, like the, pre-2010s, depending on the quality of your family's computer or whatever you have access to, like hearing about all these awesome games in like Game Informer or whatever magazine and being like, oh shit, I gotta play this PC game, it's only for PC, and then buying it or getting your parents to buy it for you and like not even knowing if your shitty computer is gonna be able to run it, like not even knowing if you can play the game, and then like, the desperate, like, how low can I take these the settings on this thing before it just like becomes like a blurry mess, just to make it playable. I can't remember what the last experience I had with that was, because I got a decent computer I'd saved up for high school, which I got mostly to do homework on, because I needed that. I needed it to do homework. I needed it to write papers. No, but yeah, I was trying to play video games all the time on that thing, and it could run. It could run Elder Scrolls Oblivion pretty well. So that was pretty sick. And then there were some games, like I remember getting some Lord of the Rings game that was sort of like Lord of the Rings, but it was also, it was like Lord of the Rings, but Battlefront, Star Wars Battlefront. And the game was, apparently it was awful. Apparently it wasn't very good. Or it was like, the online like wasn't supported or something after like a year. Like it did not have legs, that game. Or maybe I heard not that it was terrible, but that it failed to meet expectations. And probably not, that should have been predictable, I think, because like Star Wars Battlefront 2 particularly was like freaking amazing. But anyway, I remember trying to boot that game up, and it just trying to like get my computer to chug its way through that, just like a single level of that, and it just, yeah, it didn't work out so hot. Now, one game that just reminded me of Lord of the Rings, Battle for Middle-earth 2. Battle for Middle-earth 1 was pretty good as well. I played both of those. I think I got those in a set as well. Or maybe I got them... no, I got Battle for Middle-earth 1 in a set with different games, but they didn't come packaged together. Those games were freaking awesome. And much to just about everybody's annoyance, the rights to them are super messed up because they were published... I can't remember who published it. And you know what? Maybe it was a Warner Brothers thing, and then they lost the rights, but now they have the rights back. So maybe they could republish Battle for Middle-earth 2. The problem is, like... And I bet, it's just one of those things where I feel like somebody on the internet, like, must have, modded the shit out of the game so it would run on modern hardware. Because I think it's not compatible with newer Windows systems and stuff like that, and because the game's not supported anymore, it's, like, even if you have the discs, like, you can't get it working. Which I do have... I might still have the discs somewhere. But, goddamn if that isn't a shame. That game can't be obtained by legal God-fearing folk who don't want to have to resort to piracy just to play a game that they own already or owned at some point. It's one of those funny things where it's like it's like a thing that nobody is even able to make money off of anymore. I don't know, like if it is, I mean, even if it was like illegal to distribute it or something, or like why would it be illegal to distribute it if you weren't profiting off of it? I don't know. It's just unfortunate because it's a great game. Great RTS. Fun RTS, not a super serious RTS. Not like StarCraft or something like that. Or something of that nature. Now, we could mess around a little bit with the color. Ooh. So one thing I like to do is just kind of play around with the color and screw around with the... I kind of like that. Gives it a very desert kind of look to it. If we made it green, just go crazy. Ooh. Oh, actually, that's kind of cool. Maybe if it weren't so bold. A little bit of green. The green spleen. The famous superhero, the green spleen. It's not a thing, but, if there were any justice in this world, it would be. Okay. We'll just put that whole thing in shadow back here. Drop that into shadow. Drop that into shadow. I don't know if this, yeah, it's kind of like hard to say. So I didn't work out these angles and like where this is sticking out. This one's definitely behind, so I guess it would get some of the light from this thing. This is kind of gross. I need to fix that for sure. But yeah, I'm trying to think about this headdress too. Like, where would it make sense for the shadow to be coming down on this sucker? Maybe this whole, yeah, maybe this whole like back half back here would actually be in shadow based on how I've got this set up. If this is our kind of main light source up here, which I didn't have super planned out initially anyway, so it's fine. We can It's another reason I haven't been streaming these. I don't talk through portions of this this stuff. So I get to thinking. Doing too much thinking. Thinking. Sorry. Thinking. Oh. No. Try to, you zoom in and out, you muss around with the details, and then you come back in and see how they make you feel on a big picture scale. Always a good way. Sometimes you gotta do a little squinting. It's good to squint at your piece just to see if the values are coming out okay. You never know. You never know when your values have been compromised. Stay vigilant, folks. So maybe what I'll do is soften some of those shadows a little bit as I come back in for And then we can come in as well and before just then I was softening shadows with by drawing with whatever the by drawing with basically turning my airbrush into an eraser. Drawing with transparency. There we go. That's the word I was looking for. I'm gonna be careful with this because it's like, oh, I just spent all this time getting all these nice sharp shadows in there, and now I'm going through and more or less kind of getting rid of those edges in some of these places where it makes sense to do so, where there's roundness at play. Or softness. But having the edges be a little more hard and fast in the beginning, I think helps a little bit with this stage. Yeah, we like Mummy Fellow. I gotta think of a good way to get a little background for him. Like, what do I want to do with that? What kind of setting are we going for here? You know, obviously, a tomb of some kind. Pretty clear place to go with that. Some kind of like desert tomb kind of thing. But maybe that's not where we want to go. Maybe he's in some kind of temple. Maybe he's actually been living in plain sight. Maybe he's not been found in his desert tomb, but rather he's been discovered. His glamour or his whatever transformative spell has been keeping him in hiding, has been foiled. Or perhaps he's been cornered by the party, and well, they're just fighting out in the streets. He's been forced to reveal his true form. I don't know. Maybe something like that's going on. Maybe not. I think, I'm not terribly well versed in environment drawing, so we'll keep it simple. Just kind of suggest some things in the background, kind of like we did with the Frost Giant, and just keep it nice and easy for us. Nice and easy and fun. Keep it fun. Okay. So, not too bad so far. I'm liking where this is going. Definitely need to do something with the shinies, of course. Need to make the shinies a little more shiny. So do some highlights, do some maybe go in, try and get some ambient occlusion going, meaning pump up the shadows in those areas where there are edges kind of touching each other. Highlights, maybe some. I'm trying to remember what the term is. Like here, let's just go ahead and add a hard light layer and kind of like a yellow, kind of some of this like this stuff going on, you know what I'm saying? Of course, we could also use that to add some of the highlights on the accoutrements here. I do like some of the way that effect is working thus far, but not 100%. Some places that isn't really appropriate. So we'll kind of maybe give that some more thought about how we want to go about doing that. But I kind of like it over there. Can maybe this blade. Yeah, I'll have to think about that a little more, but that's okay. All right, now I know I said I was going to try and make this a marathon stream, but I'm getting to the point where I feel like I need to do some more research. I do also want to come back to the stone golem. I didn't pull that one up, but I didn't really have time yesterday to do any research on the dino bones for the stone golem, so I'm going to go back and do that so that we can add a little more visual interest to that design. And do a little bit with these elf fellows today, so a couple new ones for the book, and we'll kind of see where how things progress as we move forward. All right. Well, I think we'll call it. We're about at 2 hours here. I'd say that's pretty good for today. So take care, ladies and gents, and happy drawing. We'll see you later.